So the Bayadères from Marco Polo.
So it starts with Marco Polo because he gives the first description of these South Indian temple dancers. They're called Devadasis. Of course, he does not mention that name. And then in the early 1500s, you had all these Portuguese in India, and they wrote about them. They called them Bayadères, which means female dancer. And then later, of course, other European travelers, and they corrupted that term, Bayadera, so there were many types of spellings. And the missionaries, of course, were very negative about them. You know, they said they are whores, you know, prostitutes, but in reality, of course, they were performing dancers who were also courtesans. So.
But they were really temple dancers, or they were more entertaining?
Both. You had temple dancers, and you had in the cities and towns, you had the entertaining dancers. I mean, they were very famous, you know. So they performed at marriages and all kinds of occasions. By the end of the 18th century, there were hundreds of descriptions about them. I'm writing that now, you know, that book. Nobody has really worked on that. And then Goethe also wrote a poem, which is called Der Gott und die Bayadere. It means the God and the Bayadere. That became very famous. And that was set to music by many composers, including Schubert and Zelter and so many of them. So that was published in 1797, and in 1810 there was a famous ballet called Les Bayadères that was based on that poem.
Maybe that's the one there.
That was the first one.
Okay.
There was at least 3 of them which are famous.
Okay.
Oh no, this was an opera, it was not a ballet. Les Bayadères. And that was composed by Catel, I think. And then you get the Bayadère fashion, you know, and there was actually a Dutch guy who wrote a fantastic big chapter about them, Jacob Hafner.
Jacob?
Hafner, Haafner. I should copy that article for you.
Yeah, please, if you have it.
No, I can put it on your computer.
That's
after this.
Yeah.
I have it in my computer.
So actually the connection to Indian culture and Indian art even between the West and India started from there.
Yeah, and then then we are in 1810, right? Then we have that famous opera. Then in 1830, which is when the romantic ballet really started in those years, there was a opera ballet with the famous Marie Taglioni. She was very young, and that was called Le Dieu et la Bayadère, the God and the Bayadère, as the same title as that poem from Goethe. And it was called The Maid of Kashmir in England and in the US. And then 8 years later, the real Bayadères came. Okay. So the term Bayadère was synonymous with an Indian dancer. So then these 5 Devadasis from South India, from a temple close to Pondicherry, came to Europe, and they performed for 1.5 years.
1.5 years?
Yeah, all over. They started in Paris. I think they performed only a month or so in Paris, or maybe a little more. And then they were 3 months in London. Then they came to the rest of Europe.
Who organized this tour?
A French guy called Mr. Tardivell, but we don't know anything about him. So he brought them over on a boat.
Maybe because he traveled to India and he saw.
He probably lived in Pondicherry,
okay.
Because all these French were living there, and he knew, of course, that at that time in the 1830s it was like there was a kind of India fashion going on, like in the 1960s.
So it was already in the early 80s, 1800s.
Yeah,
But it
1830s.
it was a big fashion for India. Yeah, of course, when the
For the East in
English
general.
went there, and then
Exactly.
okay, and then it went down, and then it came back again in the 60s, in a way.
Then again, well, in a way, it was the East. So I mean,
Yeah.
you know, the Orient, so to speak, was including Spain at that time.
Mhm.
So everything which was strange, you know, or far away, was the Orient.
Mm.
So from that time also you see this, the dancers from Andalusia, they became very famous.
Yes.
Even before the Devadasis came, 4 years earlier in 1834, the first Spanish dancers performed in Paris. And they were very successful.
Mm-hmm. At the same time.
Yeah. And in 1838 was the debut, the premiere in Paris. Yeah, there was a real incredible interest in the East in those days. And then again, you see it at the turn of the century, at the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm. Also culturally interest, not just because there was a lot of trade and all political, economical interest.
Yeah, there was also a cultural interest. But at the same time, of course, it was, you know, everything of the East was exotic, so it was also a kind of exoticism.
Mm-hmm.
There were very few people who really could kind of understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the first composer who really understood the beauty and the depth of non-Western music, of course, was Debussy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He liked Japanese music, no? Also.
Yeah, and from Java, because then in 1889 at one of these big world exhibitions, world fairs, there were 4 dancers from Indonesia, from Java,
Mm-hmm.
and they became also very famous.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a continuous interest, a curiosity, you could say, you know. People were very curious.
Mm-hmm.
And you should imagine that in those days they had never seen
Mm-hmm.
even an Indian, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or a Japanese or Balinese people.
Yeah, of course it didn't, and there was no the mediums we have today to
No.
just it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it must be incredible actually to.
It's incredible.
To see.
Absolutely incredible. That's why I'm working on this book now. I'm writing a book about this.
Yeah, actually today I don't think we really appreciate that. No, like we lost in a way this kind of appreciation of how special it is in a way to. Now it became more normal and
Yeah.
click. In 2 clicks you can see anything you want. So
Yeah.
we lost this appreciation in a way.
So this was long before Uday Shankar, and even before Uday Shankar there were musicians coming to Europe performing. They didn't become famous, and especially the music, of course, people didn't understand anything.
Okay. So
The dance was a visual thing, so at least some of them could appreciate the beauty.
Mm-hmm.
And the girls were, of course, were beautiful, you know, so it was also a kind of erotic thing. But the music, I mean, there were very few people who appreciated the music from India. So these musicians never became known.
But do you know more or less which kind of musicians travel and why, under which circumstances? Or?
They usually came to some kind of world fair or some kind of colonial exhibition.
Okay.
There was that great-grandfather, the grandfather or great-grandfather of the bean player, Azad Ali Khan. He also came to London. Musharraf Khan was his name. Then, of course, but we should never forget Inayat Khan, who came.
Oh, really?
Not
the father of Vilayat Khan,
No.
or the grandfather?
No, the Sufi Inayat Khan.
Ah, yes.
There was this Sufi musician who started kind of Sufism in the West. Hazrat Inayat Khan. I actually brought out the recordings. And so these were recorded in 1909.
Wow.
So more than a century ago. He was a very good singer.
But what instrument is this?
It's a South Indian veena.
South Indian veena, but he was.
Well, he also played a little South Indian music.
Ah, yes?
Yeah. I guess so. Yeah.
Let me record it. See the instrument.
But it was basically Hindustani music, you know what he sang. So he performed all over, but again, most people couldn't understand that music, you know. And, they were interested because it was exotic, it was strange, but very few people. Actually, he also went. He met Debussy also.
He met him.
Yeah. And many, Kriabin and many of these famous people, dancers also. He worked with, so that you can read that in that book by Jerry Farrell. There's a chapter about him.
Yeah.
And I also wrote the booklet for this here, for this CD.
Okay.
So he was, you could say, the first Indian musician who attained some kind of fame in the West. But then, of course, in the First World War, everything was finished.
They stopped traveling also.
Yeah. So that changed everything. Because in that time, another, of course, musician, we shouldn't forget Rabindranath Tagore. He was a poet and a singer also, and a composer.
Yeah,
and he was very famous, of course, at that time.
That's because he came to England to study, no? He was in this university in England for some time?
No.
No?
No, the uncle of Inait Khan studied at the Royal Music Academy in London.
His uncle?
Yeah, he studied there. He got a kind of they say that he got a doctor's degree, but I doubt it. I never looked at it, but he studied at the Royal Academy of Music. So there was a lot going on, you know, between these cultures already, long before. But those Devadasis were really the very, very first. There's no doubt about it. And now when it was, people, you know, when they read it in India, they just can't believe it. When they read that chapter, it's totally forgotten.
Yes, I mean...
And they were famous.
Yes.
They were very famous. It was not something on the periphery. No, they were very, very, very famous. But
yeah, I mean, if they composed also ballets and operas also about them, it's because they should have made an impact also.
Well, those were composed before them, of course.
Yes, but I mean...
But they had a huge
there was
impact.
Some expectation.
They had an impact. And La Bayadères, the Petit Pas Ballet, which was, I think, 1877, definitely there is a lot of influence of the real Indian dancers in it. You don't see it in the dance, but in the story and in the costume and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
So it is a very long history.
Yeah, I see. I've read, or I used to think also that how it is portrayed lately. No, is that Uday Shankar's troupe was one of the first ones.
See, very few people do historical work.
Yeah.
Very few people want to look beyond and really find out. So everybody repeats, like this La Fasoli guy, he keeps on repeating, and I told him, I said, it's bullshit what you wrote. I literally told him. And I said, the title of that book is also wrong, because this is the dawn of Indian music in the United States, not in the West. I said, you only write about America. But he was a nice guy, he could accept the criticism.
He could not?
Yeah, he could.
He could, okay. Okay.
I mean, that guy starts with Ali Akbar Khan and Ravi Shankar. Come on, man. Sure, the 60s. I mean, this is my time. That's what I.
Yeah.
I witnessed it. I was there, very much so. But you cannot look at it without going back into history and to understand why.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Well, and as you say, I mean, if we start with Marco Polo, it goes really
I
And
mean,
it's true, there was like a huge connection there.
7 centuries.
Yeah.
We're talking about 7 centuries
Mm-hmm.
of some kind of
Yeah.
exchange going on, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Confluence of cultures.
Yes, that's true.
We can't just ignore that.
Of course not.
Mm.
So let me go to the beginning of these kind of questions I prepared.
Okay.
Well, first I wanted just to know a little bit about you. I mean, I pretending that I don't know anything, or even if I know a little bit, I know very limited also. So I wanted to know a little bit more of your background as musician and musicologist. How did you start approaching music?
See, I grew up in a classical Western music family, violin.
Mm-hmm.
So the music was there, of course. But it was not my music. I didn't particularly care to study that, you know. I mean, all of us had in the family. I have 4 brothers, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So the eldest one and the youngest one were really excellent violinists. You know, the eldest actually died a couple of years ago, but the youngest, they were really famous. You know.
Okay.
My youngest brother studied with Jascha Huisvest, so. But it was not my cup of tea, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember in 1957 we were watching a program on television with Yehudi Menuhin,
Mm-hmm.
and Ravi Shankar was performing. So that is when he started performing in the West, right?
Mm-hmm.
At that time. And it really made an impact on me. But then you're young, you know, you forget it.
That was the first time you saw an Indian musician?
Yeah.
Okay, that's my second question.
That's the first time I saw and heard Indian music, but I was 10 or 11 at the time, so.
He was playing with Yehudi in the because he played with him in his sitar concertos and also some pieces that he did also separate. You remember what did you hear? If it was the orchestral work or the...
No, I think it was just a solo of Ravi Shankar. I don't know if they played together.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is probably a bit later that they did this East meets West or whatever it's called, these albums.
Mm-hmm.
So in my memory I just heard and saw Ravi Shankar on television.
Okay. And can you describe maybe a little bit of what was like your first impressions on the way like this, how was this music?
Well, that made a real impact on me, but at that time you're young and you forget it. But I do remember very clearly that of all these Western composers we listened to at home, I really liked Debussy more than most of them. There was something mysterious about it, something dreamy, something. And of course I had absolutely no idea why, you know, because no idea that he was so much influenced in his thinking, you know, that and had a total open mind. So later I came to understand why I liked it. But the real time, of course, when I really got sucked into Indian music was probably in 64, 1964, I guess, or 65. And then I heard the Sarangi recording. I mean, I heard many other recordings with friends, you know. Because, yeah.
You were already studying music at the time, or?
No, I was studying biology.
Ah, yes.
I'm a botanist. Or maybe it was still in high school. I don't. No, I was studying botany. Or started studying botany, something like that. And then when I heard that Sarangi, it was a small LP of Ram Narayan, and then later also I heard 78 RPM records of Bundu Khan, and it really totally blew my mind. You know? I mean, what the hell is this? It really became almost obsessive. I want to know about this, and I want to play this.
When you heard the Sarangi?
Yeah, it was the Sarangi which really turned me on.
And do you know what was in particular, like the timbre or the rhythmical intricacies? What was
no more
or
than
everything in general? Yes.
in a way that you hear a music for the first time really deep, you know. And I mean, it was really kind of a incredible experience, you know. I just lost myself in a way. I went into that music, and I became one with that music, and it was also that kind of dialogue which is going on, you know. Not so much with the tabla player, but with in the alap, a musician is talking. It is a conversation. Alap means conversation.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that it means. And all these different emotions, especially with sarangi, of course, you know, because it's such a typical Indian instrument. I mean, the three most melodic instruments of India, which are really so deeply rooted, are the bean, the veena, the sarangi, and the flute. I mean, those are the real Indian instruments. Sitar, sarod are not really Indian instruments.
They have some influences.
They are hybrids. They are not rooted in Indian soil, you could say. Historically also. Well, there's no folk sitars, there's no folk sarods. Anyway, that's a whole different story, but it's important.
The sarod came more from the rabab, no? The sarod?
The sarod came, that was the Afghani rabab, the Kabuli rabab. And of course it adapted itself to Indian music. Same as sitar. Anyway, it totally blew my mind, and I said I have to know more about this music. Then I found the sarangi, not a good instrument, but I found one, and I started experimenting with it. And you know, nobody could Nobody could tell me anything. I didn't even know that you had to play with your nails sideways.
You were.
So I tried to.
Like.
Then somebody told me, no.
Like the violinist, yeah, of course. You have the technique of the violin.
And how to tune that damn instrument, you know, with all these sympathetic strings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I even started performing, you know, because this was the 60s, right? You could do anything without having really any real training. And then in '68 I met Ramnarayan in London. So I went to London to meet him, and so you know, got a few lessons, and but very basic. So.
And do you know, like, in which way in particular? I mean, you thought this music, like, okay, this is really different from everything I've heard before because of this, or can you name it? Can you say, okay, is this that makes it different, or is?
It has no contrapunct, of course, but it is just. I think what I said, the dialogue which is going on in. See, I still care more for alap than anything in Indian music, because it is their
essence.
Where you can really express the rag, you know, and all the subtle movements. So it was that incredible subtlety of approach, and this, in a way, storytelling, and all these different types of emotions, especially the sarangi, which are flying around. That is what baffled me the most. And up to today, I think, wow, it's amazing! What an incredible music. So the whole improvisation part of it, you know,
the freedom also that.
The freedom, in a way.
And how has this appreciation and impressions of Indian music have developed through the years? Because you have a long career of being inside this subject. How many years you've been studying Indian music, or studying about Indian music, learning?
45 years or more.
And in that time also.
I'm old.
No. I didn't say that. No. But how do you? I mean, the music keeps developing as well.
See, in the 60s, through Ravi Shankar and especially through George Harrison, Indian music became part of pop culture, right? So it was not. There were many composers who dealt with Indian music, and I don't really know that much about it because that is not my real field of interest.
Mm-hmm.
But all over certainly in the 20th century, there were many composers who were interested in music, but composers only take, there was no
Mm-hmm.
give and take, there was no real communication going on, right, between, and well, Menuhin, of course, was very much interested in the East, whatever the East is, Yuri Menuhin.
Yeah.
So that was the first, that was even before the Beatles, and many jazz musicians, Coltrane, so many of them. I mean, the chapter in Farrell's book is pretty good about that. Especially the jazz part of it. So the same is these jazz people, when they heard Indian music in the 50s, late in the second half of the 50s, it baffled them, because this was real improvisation. Right? But then it became part of pop culture, and any fashion, it's just a fashion, right?
More superficial,
Yeah. So, thousands of Westerners and hippies went to India and they bought a sitar or a tambour, right? And the count. So this was interesting because it was a new way of exoticism, you could say. So to come back to these composers, it was a one-way traffic, right? They used things from all kinds of musics in the world, including Indian music, but most of them had absolutely no understanding of it. Also not emotionally, like Debussy. Somehow he had that man was absolutely it was amazing, actually, And it does not sound like pseudo-Indian or pseudo-Japanese music. So how he integrated these things, I think that's absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
Absolutely fabulous. But he understood. Like when I first heard Indian music, I also said, well, this is great. This is absolutely perfect. This is incredible. So yeah, then of course, after that fashion, that went on in the early 70s, and then of course it went out of fashion, right? But then the people who went to India, like myself, who continued, just went on.
And your appreciation for Indian music has deepened also in all these years of contact, direct contact, and study and all this. But do you think now, of course, you listen in a different way. You are able to appreciate more because you understand more about it. But is there a specific way that you say, how I listen Indian music in the beginning? I mean, you say you haven't lost your first.
No, because I give you an example. A couple of months ago, there was a girl or a young lady from Toronto. I taught her some Sarangi, which I usually don't do. Actually, at 5 o'clock, there's a guy coming who wants to know something, but. And I don't listen much to music, or to put it differently, I rarely listen to music because there's so much music in my head, right? But I started playing recordings for her, and especially some old Sarangi players, but also Asad Ali Khan, on that Veena. And I had the same thing, I said, wow, listen to this music, it's unbelievable. You should listen to it.
Yes, Asad Ali Khan.
Yeah, with an S, Asad Ali Khan. I mean, that is the real deal, that Veena music. Now, you cannot understand Indian music unless you have it's very important, unless you are trained correctly, unless you have a great master who teaches you, right? And my first teacher, Ram Ryan, he was a useless teacher. You know, he was too young or whatever, God knows, so he was too self-involved. Which was very frustrating when I came back the first time after 2 years in India. I kind of flipped, you know, I said, what the hell am I doing? And also this culture shock to go back is a very common thing, so I was really... But then I was very lucky to find that old vocalist, you know, which is one of the greatest musicians I've ever met in my life. But not Dilip Chandra Vedi.
Dilip Chandra Vedi.
Yeah, Dilip Chandra Vedi. D-I-L-I-P Chandra, C-H-A-N-D-R-A, Vedi, V-E-D-I. So he studied with the greatest people of that time. He was born in 1901. So he was very old already, you know. But he had an incredibly sharp brain. A kind of photographic memory also. And Wim, my friend who's teaching at the University of Amsterdam, actually he discovered him. So I came to Devadasis through Wim, and it was exactly the music I had listened to for all these years, and the approach to it, you know, the old approach to it. And that man opened my brain and my ears to the music. So for years I studied with him. And that is the stuff I was teaching to that girl, you know, and then I was opening my notebooks, because of course I have to look, you know. And again I said, Jesus Christ, what an incredible music he taught. Very different from now. I mean, really much more structured, you know.
So now, after all what you've done through the years, you are also able to understand more about it, about the music he taught you in that time. Also.
Yeah, of course. And actually there are many old Indian musicians, and they say to me, Joep, you are the only guy I can talk to. You are the only one who understands what I would. And even Ram Narayan, you know, my first teacher, I mean, he's now 83, 84, and in spite of that he was a useless teacher, we are still friends. And he was a great musician once upon a time, you know, absolutely. So, and he also says, he said, you are the only one who understands. So why should I talk to other people? It's useless, they don't understand anything. So yeah, you need that in-depth training to understand what it is about. So when I listen now, I hear that stuff, I say, wow, yeah, this is really good. And you hear a lot of musicians who are known, and I say, wow, pretty superficial, this. Doesn't matter, but I mean, because the music also changes.
Yes, of course.
I don't have, unlike most people, I don't judge it, it is just changing, it's different.
And how do you experience the way this music is listened and appreciated here in comparison to India? No? How do people know?
Well, India is, at this point is not very good in India. I mean, the Americanization of India goes even more rapid than in this part of the West. And the fact that they don't pay any attention to music.
Like tradition.
In the media, for instance, only film stars and okay, Ravi Shankar, Shur and Zakir Hussain, they will get the media attention, and Amjad Ali Khan, but these idiot sons of you know these two sons of Amjad Ali Khan who can't play. I mean, like just like Anushka Shankar. I mean, she has my blessings, but I mean she doesn't know how to play sitar. It's very simple. So there's this very weird thing going on that a couple of people, you know, they're very famous and they have absolutely no clue about this music themselves. Yeah, because it takes time. It takes years. It really takes many years to get that thorough understanding for that music. It's not a
well, and deep dedication is years can pass, but if you don't really give yourself fully.
Yeah,
no,
exactly. So you need a dedicated teacher, like your guru. You know, he's just a great musician and a great teacher. I mean, and there are very few of them. They are. It's just a fact.
It's true.
I mean, I've maybe met five, six people in all these years that they were really good teachers, including my own teacher. Or Alauddin Khan, the teacher of Ali Akbar, Rafi Shankar, Nikhil Banerjee, etc., Panal Ghosh. That was a great teacher.
So in this sense, it's really a part you cannot miss in the learning process of this music, the guru-shishya relationship, or the teacher-student.
Of course not. How can you learn such a tradition? It's the same when you study violin or piano. I mean, if you don't have a good teacher.
Yeah. No, but because, for example, maybe in other traditions, I mean, of course you need a teacher, but maybe, I mean, some other musical styles, many people are autodidacts, or maybe they go to the conservatory for years, and after that they
no, that's true. No, you have a good point, because there's many musicians who are autodidact in different styles of music and who are fabulous. I mean, music is one thing. It will always go on, and whether it is country music or my son plays bluegrass, he's a bass player, and he never was trained, and he didn't want to be trained, and he's a damn good musician. So that is different, right? But I really believe for Indian music,
in particular,
you cannot go without that thorough training and the luck that you have a good teacher who's not a total ego tripper and who wastes your time. Because of all the hundreds of people I know who studied in Western, studied in Indian music in the West, 99% wasted their time.
Yeah, it happens a lot. Yes, which is a pity, because maybe many people come with a lot of devotion to learn with a.
It is a shame. It is a shame that they are being brainwashed by idiots. To put it plainly.
It's true.
Yeah.
So you think? I mean, of course, this music, how it has been appreciated and listened, it's been changing a lot.
Of course,
no?
it changed over the years. By the end of the 70s, the fashion was over, and people, even I can see that in my own life, people treated me like a kind of idiot, an old hippie, who was still playing a sarangi. And Wim and I published a little book on Indian music in Dutch. It was a total failure, of course, because nobody was interested. It goes into, but the interest kind of remained. We had this guy in Holland, John Eilers, who for more than 25 years organized concerts. And he was an oddball, but he did it. So Holland was one of the important venues for Indian music over the years. So it had its group of dedicated listeners, concertgoers. So it never disappeared. And then, of course, there was even, it is like this great Qawwali singer, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. So he became known also again through what's his name? This Womet. Peter Gabriel.
Yeah.
And other people. So it is when, famous Western, and it is very interesting, so I didn't finish that part of the story. It was not the composers, the Western composers, who really promoted the music they used. No, it was pop musicians. And that is a very strong point in that book by Jerry Farrell. I never thought about it before. He said, yeah, the guy is damn right. It was the pop culture who it was first Ravi Shankar, then Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. Actually, I played with him.
With
Nusrat.
Oh yeah?
I have a DVD of it.
Oh wow.
My friend sent me a couple of 2 months ago. And then it is Zakir Hussain. They became really very, very famous stars. But actually now I just 3 days ago I got a SMS, from Dhruba Ghosh that with this Paul Winter concert they got a Grammy. And Steve Gordon, Steve Gordon, the flute player?
No.
You don't know him?
No.
Oh, come on.
Oh my God, I don't know him.
Jesus.
No.
He's really the most well-known Western guy playing. You should interview him because he's really a very interesting guy.
I don't know him.
Steve Gorn, you should find out.
Definitely.
He really is a damn good musician. He doesn't play in Harichi style, you know, it's more the whole panel.
Bansuri.
Yes, and he's good.
Bansuri.
Yes.
Never
That you guys never heard about him.
Never.
That's a shame.
Where is he from? Where did he learn?
He's an American.
I never heard of him. Never.
He's a very good friend.
Yes.
So he also played in that Grammy Award CD.
Okay.
Yeah, he's very good.
I will check him out for sure.
And he also played with many jazz musicians, you know, in that early time. I met him when I first was in India in '71. We met already, and we are still friends. But he's really good. He's very, very broad. You know, he does many different things.
Okay.
I think, and that is also very important. You know, when you go into Indian music, you can't just make your living just with Indian music.
Yeah.
This is
It's difficult, especially
very difficult.
Maybe for people coming from outside India, living not in India, of course, you know, like people like us, no,
No. So a lot of it is fusion, you know, crossover, and that's fine, that's good, because a guy like Steve has been playing all these years with Colin Walcott, and you can find him on the web. He has an impressive CV.
Do you know where he studied? Or?
He studied in Calcutta with one of the students of Pananal Ghosh. Yeah.
Okay.
And when I met him in '71, he was already a very good musician because he's a real musician. I mean, he's a damn good musician. He could play any instrument. Yeah.
Nice.
He's a very interesting guy.
Okay.
I think, in some ways, the most interesting Western person of my generation.
Okay.
Right?
Then I have to really listen to him.
Yeah.
Okay. And wait, let me see. Yeah, so I mean, how this music, no, the appreciation of this music has been changing, not only in the West but also in India. I didn't finish that. So in India, of course, when I came there, I mean, there was these huge classical music festivals. You know, they started at 6 in the evening and they stopped at 4 in the morning. And all kinds of different people you saw there. But because of this, whatever, that appreciation is not that type of appreciation. There were many great musicians. You don't have these types of musicians at this point in history. Sure, there's still a few. But compared to them, at that time you had dozens of them. You think also the level of musicians has been going down? Also the level in music playing?
Yeah, in a way, yeah. In a way, I mean, there's still fabulous musicians like, what's this singer? No, he escapes my mind, no?
It's a woman?
The man.
Diva Walker? No.
No, well, of course, is a very good singer also in Drupal, but Ulhas Kashalkar.
Ulhas Kashalkar, he's great. Yeah.
He is of that same kind of training and level as these dozens of musicians, but there is not many of them. Sure, there are some very good female singers also. So
maybe it has to do, no, as a two-way process. If the interest in the listeners and the public is going down, no, there are less musicians willing to dedicate their lives to it.
That's one, sure, maybe. Oh, that definitely, that's a point, you know, because India has modernized. But how can you spend 12 years of your life studying with a guru?
In today's time.
Yeah. How can you even do what I did to live all these years there, you know? And I was pretty poor, right? I never got support, you know? No, rarely. And I mean, I was not poor compared to Indians, of course not. But I mean, compared to other people with their big research grants, you know. But in those days, one didn't care. You just went and said, "Okay, screw it, I'm going to India." I couldn't, you know, I didn't care for a career.
Yeah, it's brave. It's
So, but it was a different time also. It was really a different time. I mean, the world was less. When I talk to my son, he says, "Dad, it is really different," and I agree with him. So, yeah, things, of course, things are changing. It is in a way, as we see in India, you don't have a government which supports the arts like here in the West. Although in Holland now they are destroying it with this present-day fascist and Nazi government we have. It will be totally destroyed in my own country. But of course there is still support. In India you don't have that. You have some sponsors, you have... it is different. Am I negative? No. No, because I really don't believe... Many people in India, of course, are very negative, you know, and the older they get, the more negative they get, and they say it will disappear. I don't think it will disappear. I believe also that the West has played an extremely important role in the... I mean, there would be no Drupad without the interest in the West. There would be no famous stars, including your own guru, without the interest in the West. They simply wouldn't exist, right? And also the money they earn in the West. So that Jerry Farrell doesn't write about, because but that is a very important part, you know, the whole economics of it, and just questioning would classical Indian music still be there as it is now. I don't believe it would be there. Sure, it would be there very little on the periphery, even more on the periphery than it is now, because we talk about music for the elite, right? Classical music is for the elite.
Before it wasn't like that. Before it was really for everyone, no? Even including so many of these festivals were free of charge for the public to come. But also very humble people will really appreciate classical music.
Sure. But was that always like that in India? I don't think so. I mean, the what we call classical music, of course, that term was also invented, was court music and a little bit temple music. So it was for the elite.
It started everything, yes.
It was always for the elite. And these ustads, because most of them, of course, were Muslim, were supported by the kings and princes and rulers.
So in a way, what do you think it's like the biggest challenge for Indian music today and for the future? What is, because now also what I see in India, many of the concerts are supported by sponsors, private sponsors, and of course the private sponsors, they only want the big names. And so the big names are only 3, 4, but they're like well, not really, but
10, 12, 15.
Yes, but it's still very little in comparison to the thousands of musicians and young musicians, super talented, who have been working very hard. I find it my own gurus or fellow friends or musicians. I see it's very hard for them to come out.
See, to be able to have a career like Haraji, you have to be so incredibly tough, right? I mean, you have to be totally madly dedicated to that music, but then you also have to be clever, which is for any musician. It is not just that you can play very well. No. You have to do something new, right? Always. So all these musicians who copy Ravi Shankar or Vilayat Khan, or for that matter Haraji, you know, who play exactly like him, they won't make a dent I'm convinced of that. But that is for all music in the world, huh? It's not just
Yes,
for
of
Indian
course.
music. You have to be a fighter. I mean, like I have to be a fighter to set up that World Music Department. We can talk about it later. You have to be a damn fighter. You have to be like a terrier, you know, bite into something and not let go.
Yeah.
So you have to be mad in that sense that you believe in something. And then you have to be, as a musician, you have to sell yourself also. So I see it with myself, you know, the assholes of the musicians, I will do nothing for them. Never. The people who insulted me, they can go to hell. Even if they are very good musicians.
Yeah, of course.
And it is not just me. Any concert organizer, you know, will react like that to say, this is a pleasant person. Much easier to work with pleasant people than with frustrated people who think they are great. And you know, so it is a whole package. I mean, there are so many aspects to becoming an exceptional musician. Then, of course, you need all the venue. You need to play on the stage, because that is where you really become a musician. First, we have that training, right? But then you need the venues to play. If, as a tabla player, you say, I'm not going to play with this guy or with this woman, you know, forget it. Then you're not a tabla player, because you're basically a tabla slave. You know, you have to bow down, Sarangi player too. You have to accept the nonsense which comes to you. I have noticed over the years the people who are too proud, who are too conceited, who are too critical of others, they won't make it. They won't make it. No. You have to be open-minded to do things like crossover projects. Now in India this discussion has been going on for God knows how many years, but they all call it confusion, and they say, oh, wow, what an original term. So they never thought about it, because Indian musicians are worse even than classical musicians in the West, who have absolutely no interest in any other type of music.
That's true. That's true. They don't.
You know, they don't listen to other music. You know, they couldn't care less. They really think that Indian music is the only music in the world. Well, it is a great music, but it's not the only music in the world. No, no. I'm sorry to say that.
No, it's true.
And so yeah, you need all these things. That is one of the reasons why Ravi Shankar became so famous, because he's damn clever and he's very open-minded, and he knew exactly which people to use for his career. You know, the jazz people, Yudi Menuhin, George Harrison, blah, blah, you know, and all the other famous people he worked with, you know, so he knew exactly how to tap into, okay, this is good for me too. But you have to be open-minded. So yeah, in one way I agree with you. It's probably very hard now, because now there is only maybe 10, 15 musicians. Now in India, of course, you don't have orchestras, you don't have ensembles, you don't have the richness of music life we have in the West. Even with your damn violin or whatever, you know, you can play anywhere. Again, if you are a real open-minded musician, you can. There are so many types of possibilities to teach and whatever. Indian music is solo music.
Yeah. Well, except the film music, of course.
Except the film music. And that is another factor why almost everybody who are now legends, you know, they became famous because of film music.
Yeah.
And Hariji is the only one who is proud of it. Hari Prasad is the only musician who is as proud of his film music as his classical music, which to me means he is a real musician and not a hypocrite.
Yeah, of course.
That's exceptional. All these other people hated it.
They did it as a job, or
It is a job.
Just give me 1 second. So we are a little bit in the difficult subject of what are the challenges for Indian music in the of today's time and also in the future.
Yeah.
what do you envision that there could be even new challenges, and why do you think that Indian classical music has decreased its popularity, including in India and
Because
in the younger
again,
generations?
it is like here in the West, you know, classical music is music for the elites.
Mm-hmm.
It is just for a small group of people who grow up with it, you know, or the parents like it or stuff like that. I mean, my son doesn't do classical music, and that's just a fact of life, and definitely not Indian music, you know. So.
So it's a purely
And the
socio-economical
same,
thing?
yeah,
It's a purely socio-economical...
yeah, just have this group. Sure, after the independence in India and even before that, they stimulated the radio, paid a lot of attention to classical music. Musicians earned their living in the All India radio. But of course, the commercial, the world, we live in a very tough world of commercial stuff. Any program on television, you know, where there is not X million viewers is wiped out, even here, you know, where it is still public television. And thanks God, people, there are still programs about art and music and dance, etc. But in India, the reality is even worse. It's just like the US. It is all money. It is all commercial, so it is all incredibly stupid and superficial. I mean, I watched the television this time when I was there, and I said, "Whoa, this is even worse. This is just like America. Of the 100 stations, you know, you only see stupid things."
Yeah, also in the radio. You don't hear classical music, it's all film or pop, I think.
Yeah. So that ideal of educating the people, of giving them something extra, is not there anymore. Last night I was watching something on this Matt, whatever, he's a famous film star. You know, an American guy. I forgot his last name now. But he was saying the same thing, you know, education, like in the US, but also now in this part of the world, is purely commercial. Every penny you have to pay, you know, in America it's disgusting. I mean, I have an American wife and an American son, but I can't stand that country, which is problematic sometimes. But here, they are also imitating it, and in India they have just totally imitated it in no time.
It's a role model.
So sure, there is a big challenge for that music, and if the stupidity level, and I'm not saying that Bollywood is bad. No, it's great music, a lot of it fine, yes. But it's a different story. It's a different thing. At the same time, I'm not afraid that Indian music will disappear, the classical music. No. There is, as long as there is an interest in the West, it will feed each other, you know, through the... And the music has been there for a couple of thousands of years, so there's no reason why it should disappear. It will become smaller.
So in a way it's also like the responsibility of the media to feed this kind of process of appreciation, because it's a two-way process. No, if there are not enough watchers or enough listeners, the media cuts it out. But also the listeners and the watchers see and watch what the media gives to them. So it's a two ways. No, if you only hear crap and in the radio and the TV, that's all what you get used to see and get used to.
I mean, I was really shocked when I saw a program about these two sons of Amjad Khan, you know, who became really media stars, and they did fashion, and then, because I'm really not I mean, I don't know what is happening that much in Indian music today. I frankly admit, I hear it. I mean, I know a little bit, but I'm not keeping up. But when I heard these guys play, I said, "This is really absolutely terrible. They don't know how to play." Yeah. Because as young, handsome little boys, they were thrown into that world of media. They made a lot of money, and hello. I mean, you need to sit and practice. You need to be dedicated. Amsterdam was once upon a time a great musician. So sometimes he plays shit, but I mean, you see that he has this training and but if you don't give this to your children and you throw them into the media, in the world of media, and say, well, no. So so there's that one side, and India is going very fast. I mean, it's really horrible. So it's really, everything is commercial, everything is money, everything is power. So that does not look too good, but at the same time, again, maybe after that phase is over, I mean, you see, there's another thought. There's that Speak Mackay organization in India and abroad. These are students all over the world, Indian students, and they promote classical music of both the Hindustani and the Carnatic. So there's always two things, and I'm convinced when India rediscovers its own great music, that maybe more interest.
And you think maybe the phenomenon of so-called globalization we lived in the last years, like the access to more information, the access to more kinds of music, different traditions, that has played in a way a role to decrease maybe the appreciation for Indian music in maybe in the West in the 70s, in the late 60s, 70s. Maybe Indian music was of the first ones that started to gain so much attention.
Absolutely, it was the first. Of course, there was Latin music. Latin jazz is earlier.
In the U.S. but more
in the U.S. There have been somehow there has been also a continuous interest in flamenco. But I told you already, in 1834, these dancers and musicians came, and that was not called flamenco then, but there has been a continuous interest. Tango also, actually, in the early 1900s, there was became a very popular music. But the more classical or music from the East, definitely India has had this presence for a long time. And sure, all the experiments which are going on between musicians in the West and in India, that is very important for that music. Extremely important, because only then in India they say, oh yeah, okay, wow, good music. So now with that Grammy, you don't get, because I SMS with Dhruba, and of course then you look at the internet, many articles about Dhruba, he was just one of the members of that Paul Winter concert. And I called Steve, and I said, did you get a lot of media interest? He said, no, because in America it is 98% pop music for the Grammys, right?
Yes,
not for world music.
Yeah.
But still, all these things are good.
Yeah, they can sing.
I repeat that without the West, Indian music would not exist. Classical music would not exist.
It's so important for its own. Yeah.
Because also the media people, they don't know anything, right? I mean, media people nowadays, in the past you still had some sophisticated people who were erudite, who had read, who had listened. Now, of course, you see a pretty Indian girl and as stupid as a whatever, a pig, and they just repeat. They don't even look at the internet, the same dumb stereotyped things.
Yeah. Or they see it more as a product they can exploit and they can profit from.
Yeah, so they always repeat and parrot what is happening in the West. But I'm not really pessimistic. I mean, I'm just a realist, and that's why I'm interested in history, because it explains things how things are today. That's the interesting thing of history.
Yeah.
The history itself is not interesting, but it explains why things are the way they are today. And going through that centuries, I say, well, that will continue. And there will be fashions, and then it will go again, and then there will be...
Yeah, it's all in constant movement.
Yeah.
But what I meant more also with the globalization is, I mean, like, today we have very easy access to so much information and knowledge, no? And in this case, no, like, maybe I can remember even in my lifetime, also in the past 10 years from the first time I went to India, how it has changed also. It has been changing a lot in the past 10 years.
Very much.
And maybe,
very much.
Yeah, and maybe I remember also Indian music was stronger 10 years ago in my medium here or in Mexico, and I didn't have much access to Persian music or Turkish music or Chinese music, for the fact, no, it was, and now I do very easily, very much more easy of how it was 10 years ago, and in that sense I think maybe that, of course, it has opened up many doors, but it has, in a way, now it has, Indian music has to share that platform more.
Yeah, but still Indian music plays a key role in it, because it is so captivating. There's also a whole image around it, you know. So of course in the all kinds of spiritual stereotypes are there, but it is really, I saw it's the Raga Guide, right? And I met so many musicians all over the world, or heard from them, you know, really rock musicians, jazz musicians, classical musicians, whatnot. And that Indian music still has a special attraction to people, which many other musics don't have. So that needs to be analyzed better, you know. Maybe I should do that myself one of these days, although how much can you do? But why is Indian music has a special attraction to Western musicians, of all kinds of different musicians, and I find that very fascinating. Because the real musician is always searching for something, right? Is always trying to put the borders further, and many of them, from any music scene in the West, when they come across Indian music, it is something which blows their minds, and right so, because it is a very intricate music, melodically speaking and rhythmically speaking.
And do you know what, I mean, of course it's very hard to put your finger in, is this what makes it so special or so different, but for example, because there are many other music traditions based in modal, in modality, no, in makams but what makes Indian music so different also even to those traditions?
It really allows you to improvise if you understand what it is about. And even if you have a little understanding, you can do a little improvisation.
Even if you have it?
Have a little understanding of it, which many fusion musicians in the West, they have very basic understanding, but still it allows them to do things. I'm quite tolerant to that, actually. So if you want to really go into the music, we have talked about it. It's a whole different ballgame. But it allows, I think it's really the improvisational aspect of Indian music and the excitement and the so many different scales, you know. We don't even talk about ragas, but even there's, I mean, I think in North Indian music 32 different scales are being used, you know, which we don't have here. And again, the whole rhythm part, which is not my cup of tea, but I mean, it's incredible, of course. the rhythmical aspect of it also, both in the north and the south. So yeah, it is fascinating. When people come across it, say, Jesus, what the hell is this?
Mm-hmm.
Like you and me, and like all of the people like us who went into it.
Mm-hmm. And maybe the combination also of all the elements, no? The rag, the improvisation, the tal, all the timbre of the instruments.
Yeah.
The deepness of the motions, all
Absolutely.
these things.
So all these aspects.
The whole package.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, maybe talking about this crossover also, and now that this is happening more, and that has been a way to connect the West and India. I mean, until now, I think it has happened much more in terms of world music fusion, so to say, or jazz and Indian music, but not so much in classical, Western classical music, because that's also a very broad concept. But Western classical music and Indian music, there has been some works done.
Yeah.
I also would like to know maybe your opinion about those first works, like the concertos of Ravi Shankar, the Adyanant. I don't know if you have heard them.
Yeah, again, I don't think they're great concertos, to tell you the truth. The Ravi Shankar, I don't think they will survive these Ravi Shankar concertos, because from a Western point of view, they are not that great. And I have heard composers talk about it, at the instrumentation, and again, it is not my field, but I grew up with it, so yeah, I think it is pretty simple actually from a Western point of view of instrumentation and the whole whatever. But okay, that was a phase in that music.
And do you think, I mean, is there an option for that to develop? I mean, if also thinking, no, that if you take a rag, for example, and you want to create a symphony, let's say you want to take a pentatonic rag, like Bhupali. I mean, I know Debussy also used a lot of pentatonic scales and composed as well. This is just...
I think there's a tremendous amount of possibilities to evolve that. But of course, the Western music, contemporary classical music, is itself, of course, in a very weird stage, because most people don't listen to it, to that atonal or whatever experimental music. And sure, but again, you need a composer who understands Indian music. But maybe that is not the area we should look for. We should really look for the world music crossovers. I think there's much more fascinating what is happening there.
Like blending different traditions together, like for example flamenco or Indian music.
Yeah, I think there's much more scope for that, because that fits much better than to try to make a whole complex score, which becomes a copy of some composer or so. I don't think there's any concerto which was made which is really exceptionally interesting.
Yeah.
Also, Menuhin playing with Ravi Shankar. I mean, when you see Menuhin playing, it is all composed, and it's fabulous that he did it. But musically speaking, it is not interesting at all. That's my opinion. But so no, I think you see the whole difference between now and the past. So I didn't finish that thought yet. That I said these composers only took, and they never communicated, and they never gave back. Now, the collaboration in these projects, in all these world music projects, where everybody is there equal as a musician, that is a whole different story. That is something of the past few decades. In which, of course, a guy like Zakir Hussain plays an absolutely fundamental role.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
But I see a lot of, I ask this also because I see a lot of interest now growing also in India, no? To learn more about harmony but then also, I mean, because they don't have maybe the deep training that the West has in this sense.
Exactly.
There are some experiments and some things done, but maybe they
See,
also
as long as the wrong people in India pull the strings, in 97 and 98, I think it was, we had a few conferences in Bombay, and I really thought it is time now to set up a kind of real Indian music conservatory, where like in our conservatory, they learn about other musics, right? And India, they should be trained, of course, thoroughly by their masters, but they should also learn so many things you need to know nowadays. You need to know English, you need to be able to write letters or whatever, write your liner notes, but also musically. And of course it did not happen, because where do you get the money from? Who is going to collaborate with who? Because you also know that all Indian musicians are totally ego trippers. So everybody thinks they are the greatest. And they will not collaborate with each other. Well, you see that even in our conservatories, very few people, and especially in the classical music department, they don't collaborate, they're also total weirdos, ego trippers. But we have the possibility that students can learn very many different things on a professional level, and that doesn't happen in India. That is a serious thing.
Yeah.
Because they're only learning their own stuff. They are not learning how to be a stage musician also, how to sell yourself, how to do crossovers with other people. Because again, for the last so many years, most musicians talk, well, this is all confusion. Yeah, well, okay, if you are that narrow-minded, forget it then. But then also don't play when you are invited in the West in a fusion. Don't have a big mouth to talk like this, but when it comes to making money and getting fame, including Ravi Shankar, I was playing for all those hippies in this time and I still have a big problem with it. Well, screw him, That is why he became world famous.
Of course.
That is total hypocrisy. If you start putting down your audiences, there is something wrong with you. That is how he became world famous at the time. And then, of course, who knows Ravi Shankar nowadays? Nobody in the street. Maybe my generation, people say, oh yeah, there was that guy Ravi Shankar. But so, yeah, that is, it would be. But at the same time, of course, there's a lot of music. I mean, like this A.R. Rahman, that guy is a fantastic.
Music director.
So maybe it is not happening in classical music. And these guys know how to compose and know how to work with everybody all over the world. And they are not stuck up and they are not dumb. So it is maybe that classical world which has to be get more open-minded. But it is a very difficult thing because everybody believes in the Guru Shishya Parampara,
Or in the traditionalism, to keep the things as pure as.
Which itself is very questionable because
it keeps developing.
Because it keeps on changing.
Yeah, that's true.
And stuff I know and I hear, I don't hear in Indian music nowadays. Stuff I have learned. And I don't play it anymore because I'm a lazy bastard as far as playing is concerned, but there's a lot of stuff I could play and I still is in my head. I don't hear that type of tradition. There's nobody I know who knows that type of music. That is traditional music, right? So what is tradition? What is purity? The tradition keeps on changing. Not the essence of the tradition, of course not. But
the way it's
But so many musicians, including your own teacher, I mean, he changed so many things, and
Yes, and that's why it became who he was also.
Yes.
And well, yes, it was one of the questions also. What are, in this innovation and experiment, what are the limits of innovation and experiment in a constant transformative tradition based in improvisation, such as Indian music? No? Like,
You cannot leave unless you have the really thorough understanding what this so-called improvisation is about in Indian music.
Mm.
And a lot, of course, is not improvised, a lot of it is learned by heart, a lot of it is stuck in the brains, in the memory. Yeah, you need that.
Mm-hmm.
If you, in a way I said this already with some of these examples, you know, of people who are, I'm not judging Anusha Shankar, she's probably a very clever musician in her own right, and a good musician in her own right.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as Indian music is concerned, it's pretty nothing.
Mm.
Yeah, how far can you go? I don't know.
Mm.
It depends on what you want.
Mm-hmm.
It's two things. One thing is that you're a real well-trained and deep Indian musician, and the other thing is that you're a very good experimental musician.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where is that balance also, no?
Yeah.
Where do you start? You start from the experimental side, and
Well,
you don't call yourself Indian classical musician, or if you start from the other side,
Yeah.
I mean, I see a phenomenon which it has shocked me in a way also, that now the last years I've been in Bombay, for example, to study. I see how the concerts of Indian classical music, the Indian classical concerts, how they have changed the format. I remember 10 years ago, they were like really like all the time in the world, and you had one artist for hours and nobody minds and everybody's there really attentive listening. And now you have this kind of short slots of half an hour per musician, even if it's a classical concert. So the laps are automatically 10 minutes or even shorter sometimes, short lap and short improvisation. You know, it all become very compact, and that transforms the music very much.
Yeah.
Also, that changes the music.
Yeah, and that probably leads to the thing that it is much more pre-composed than it is supposed to be. At the same time, we should be very careful to believe all those stories about these alaps from 1 or 2 hours.
Mm.
I don't buy that. Again, because I'm a person who likes to think historically.
Mm.
I don't think, except maybe in Drupad, in Veena and in Drupad singing, you had these long alaps, and particularly in that what they call nowadays the daggers, sure it was there. But I don't think so that all these legendary names we hear, I think before the 1940s, many ragas are performed in 20 or 30 minutes.
Really?
Oh yes. Yes. That's
Yeah.
again a thing which needs to be studied,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't do everything by myself, but I am almost convinced of that. And a lot of it was also more pre-composed.
Mm. Even more than now, you think? Or
Yeah.
that's
So that's very interesting, because where does this idea come that everybody has to play hours of alap? The fact of the matter is that most of them cannot.
Exactly.
Again, unless you are trained in alap, you cannot do that. And most musicians are not trained in alap.
Mm-hmm.
They have a good imagination if they are really musical, blah 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 blah, but you hear it so many times when, especially my wife, you know, because she's a dancer and she organizes concerts in America, and she plays the CD, and then in the beginning I think, well, it sounds good, you know, and I think, I've heard this before in this and this LP, because I'm of the LP generation, huh? And then indeed, after 10 minutes, they have no clue how to continue with that rag. So they copy pieces from the great masters,
Mm.
because they were not trained, you know, and then they don't know how to go on. I hear this so often. I think, yeah, well, you know, not good. Because that art of really developing a rag step by step by step, you have to be, of course, you have to be a fantastic musician to start with. But you need to be trained also. It is something you cannot invent yourself. And you have to, as Harity also said, and any musician said, you have to listen to the old masters. This is another thing which I noticed, which I also noticed in the conservatory, that the students don't listen. I said, forget it. I listened so much all these years. You have to listen to all these great singers of the past, and then you get, oh wow, and all kinds of people. So this is extremely essential to become a real good musician. Not just what you learn from your guru. No real great musician only plays what they learn from their guru. They say that, but it is nonsense. It is total nonsense. Of course, I challenge them, and they become chicken, and because I'm probably one of the few guys who can tell them nonsense what you say. But it is nonsense. It is a fairy tale.
You're right.
And again, I really believe that in the past these alabs were not that long.
Or maybe not the alabs so long, but you have stories, no, that there were like musicians playing for 4 hours, no, in these festivals, or
no, not 4 hours. I never heard a musician playing 4 hours. Never. That's a fairy tale. Sure, they played them. I mean, Leiden, you know, fabulous. He can play an alab of an hour, and one gets never bored. But how many people can?
Yeah.
Ravi Shankar can't. Azadari can. Some people can, but not that many could play these really long alabs. Harity, all recordings, fabulous.
Yeah, there are some recordings.
Fabulous. I said, whoa.
Well, his classes in Bombay, they are always 1 hour alab, 1 hour jor.
1 hour jor? Really?
1 hour alab, that's what we do in
Jesus
Bombay.
Christ.
We don't do, well, sometimes there is a tabla player coming, and then he gives us the composition and show, but the part of practicing with tabla is minimum. What he really teaches in the class is alab and jor.
Very interesting.
1 hour alab, 1 hour jor. And
Very
sometimes it goes a little bit longer.
Very, very interesting. Especially the jor parts. I had
Yeah.
no idea. My teacher was teaching me only alab. Most of it, but
Well, 1 hour, yeah, with our, no, he plays, we answer, so maybe it's...
yeah. So
but
still, yeah.
Yes, but I know he
Well, that
he
is
loves
the,
alab.
yeah. And some of these recordings are absolutely fantastic.
He did some concerts even where he played. There was a concert in a church where he played only alab. No, like there was this story that he was in this church, and even Zakir Hussain was there to accompany him, and he just started to play, and I don't know, people were enjoying so much, and he then said like, well, yeah, but now it's time to continue, you know. And they said, no, please carry on how you are just playing. And he was feeling ashamed because Zakir Hussain was there waiting to play with him. No? But they wanted him to just continue like that. And he played the whole concert just alab.
Yeah.
I don't know when was that. But Well, yeah, no. If it happened like that so much in the past, I of course don't know. But I knew Vilayat Khan was playing long sets.
Vilayat Khan, because these people, you see, Alauddin Khan, even before that, you see these sitar and sarod players, even before Alauddin Khan, they started learning with Drupad masters. Because they realized, of course, this thing we are talking about, and you are saying about Harity also, that, I mean, it is the bloody essence of the music for the ragas. Raga lab, that is it. So they started taking training with Drupal people, right? Because they had that knowledge and the training. And so everybody says that Leiden Khan brought in this stuff. No, that's not true. But he played an extremely important role in bringing back that Alab Georgiana into the concert format. Leiden Khan did it in a different way, but he was such an absolute musical genius that he could do anything. He didn't get that much training, actually, according to what they said, because his father died when he was young and blah blah blah. But okay, some people have that.
Same like the Dara brothers also. Siamuddin and Fiamuddin. No, they were alone quite young, no?
Yeah, but then of course within the family they got training.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. So, where are we?
Yeah, no. Well, Leiden Khan is one subject by itself.
Oh yes, unbelievable. And you don't have that many musicians. There's always these. See, that is why I say I don't think this music will disappear, because you have India as a country where the level of intelligence is higher than probably any country in the world. So of course they go into science and technology and IT. Now, if very minor percentage, 0.1% goes back to the music, with their type of brains, you know, they have mathematical brains. Now we have more than 100 years of recorded music. Yeah? So in a way I am going to make a very contradictory statement which I said just now. In a way you don't need that much training. This is very contradictory what I said, but it is also true. The truth is not in one way of looking at it. That if you have that type of brain, that type of musicality, that type of madness also, because most musicians who are real good musicians are mad. You know, they are also stupid, between inverted commas, because that is the only thing they have, right? So they have absolutely no zero, including energy, zero interest in nothing. No.
It's true.
It's true. Huh? So, if you have that particular type of character and the brain, which has got part of it's not the heart of course, but also the brain, then you need some keys, you know, some if you then indeed a lot of that music can be reconstructed. Which is very interesting because maybe in South India a little bit, but not in North India, they never look at old ragas which are written in the books and revive them. There are so many rags which have disappeared and they're fabulous. And it gives you a new idea because even I got bored with the ragas I was playing, you know, maybe I'm not a real musician. But sometimes you need something new, right? Now that will also happen. So in that sense, very contradictory, but I go to the point that I don't think that music will disappear. You don't need that many musicians. You just need a few really brilliant musicians.
That's true. And do you see any of the younger generations of musicians today? Do you see any people that match this kind of expectation, to say?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I mean, how young?
Yeah,
I think when I heard Ulrich Skelkar, he's not young, but I mean, it really blew my mind. Is there any young there must be, I don't know. Certainly in the rhythm, but again, I cannot talk about that field because I don't pay much attention to that. I was listening before I went back to Holland, the son of Ram Narayan, Brits Narayan, playing Sarod. It was absolutely fabulous. Fabulous! Sure, there must be more. There must be really, I don't know, I mean, you really need, you need to be with that music for many, many years before it is really sunk into you.
Yeah. Even if you're born with it, no? Even
If you're born with it. Even if you are some kind of exceptional genius, like there was that singer Kumar Gandharva, you know, he never really got that type of traditional training. And I had an old film when he was 9 years old. Wow. So, but then that man was always inventing, always listening, always thinking, you know. So that is a whole different type of character. Do I know a really young musician who blows my mind? I don't know.
Have you heard Koshiki Chakraborty?
No. Sitar?
No, a singer, the daughter of Joep Chakraborty.
Oh, yeah. I've heard her, yes.
She's quite good.
Yeah, she's good, yeah.
Okay.
But she didn't blow my mind in the sense that
No.
the son of, not some, but there's a whole bunch of musicians who really have blown my mind. Kishore Yamanka, of course. And Vilayat Khan and Ram Narayan when he was good, before he wrote his own music. And Haraji, which I never listened to Haraji before he came to Rotterdam.
Really?
Yeah.
Never heard him before he came.
I never went to a concert, you know, because I'm a lazy bastard, and I never really was aware of how fabulous he is. So it is also a matter of getting in, and then of course every day, wow, this is something, really something, really. I mean, not the so, and his whole character. Of course, I know him pretty well now, and yeah, it's a real musician.
So just to end, I mean, I just wanted to go back to this point of the, I mean, what is the possible connections or a blending between Indian rag music and Western harmony system of music, and what do you think are the risks of or the challenges of this kind of experiments? Also, what both, I mean, if an Indian musician is trying to experiment with harmony, and if a Western composer
Well,
is
look
trying to
at
experiment with
A.R. Rahman, we mentioned, you know, he's doing interesting things. Maybe not with huge orchestras, and but and again, I don't know. I went to that film and The Slumdog Millionaire, which I thought was a quite interesting movie. First time I disliked it, but the second time I thought it was pretty good actually. But the music, in that type of music, which is kind of ensemble music, which is composed, yeah, I think they're damn good, yeah. And actually Wim, my friend Wim, knows much more about all this Bollywood stuff. And honestly speaking, I think the innovation in the music is happening there in Indian music.
in the
Like the great innovations in our Western music happened in rock music in the late 50s and the 60s, and there are so many fantastic, all kinds of musicians in different styles. I mean, you know, usually I watch television around 2 in the morning before I go to sleep, and I forget it again, but sometimes I see young singers or players, and wow, good, fantastic. I forget their names again, but then I think they're damn good. So, in the West, the innovation in music is not happening in classical music. Forget it. Maybe 1 or 2 or 3 composers, sure. You know, again, it is not a field I'm that familiar with, but it cannot also somehow, from an evolutionary point of view, there's too much has happened, and when you go in the past, you see how many composers there were, thousands, and they're all forgotten, right?
Mm.
And then sometimes they are rediscovered, and people say, wow, this is interesting music now. So, a lot of it is happening in other musics in the West. Also in world music, whatever that funny term means.
Mm.
And I think in Indian music, a lot of it is happening also in other fields, not that much in classical music.
Mm-hmm. More in film. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's a natural thing, and by the time you're old, that is probably also classical music. Like some of these old film singers, when you listen to them, it's purely classical music now. Even in my ears, you say, wow, this is beautiful, classical.
Mm-hmm.
Saigal,
Mm-hmm.
from the 30s or 40s, God knows. Fantastic. Sounds purely like classical music to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's in a way, anyway, their training or the background. Also, even if it's not, they receive a direct training in Indian classical music, that is.
Yeah, many of them did.
Yeah,
Of
many,
course,
many
I
they
mean,
did.
Lata Mangeshkar was trained in classical music, so
Mm.
so a lot. So that it probably the new things happen through that film or whatever music, you know. So.
Mm. But do you think, I mean, it could be in a way corrupting a rag, if you can say it like that, no? If you try to play it in a big ensemble or an orchestra, for the fact, no? Like, for example, a rag like that uses microtones, like the Bari Kannada, or if you want to use other notes of the rag, if you want to harmonize it, no? If you want to create chords to harmonize a rag, but then you have to use notes which are outside.
Yeah, so it's a contradiction. I mean, orchestras are tuned in a tempered tuning and pianos, etc. So Indian music is not tempered.
Mm-hmm.
So that by itself is a contradiction. You can do very interesting things, but rag music is rag music.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And sure, that concerto which Hariji and that French guy made was very beautiful also. But yes, I thought it was more interesting than what Ravi Shankar did.
Mm.
But of course, Hariji didn't compose it. The guy composed it, right?
Yeah, yeah. But he just did the melodies.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
yeah.
he composed in the Indian way of, for their understanding, that's composing. No? Like when you the composition for Indian music is not like that. It's Thai, Andhra, these kind of things, the lines. No, but the one that did really the whole work of harmonizing everything, orchestrating is
Pablo.
Pablo.
And it was pretty good, I thought.
Mm.
And it was Latin stuff in it, so yeah, it was good. Will it survive? Probably not. Because, I mean, you need Hariji to play it. I don't know.
Mm. Have you heard, for example, the Atlas ensemble?
Yeah.
That is happening here, and they are doing also an academy. Of,
Yeah, that is,
trying to plan
well,
this.
I should really listen to it, but I know that guy, Joep Bor.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him one time, you know, he needed, so I went there to that, and I kind of told him, I said, okay. In my view, this is exoticism in the old sense of the word. You use all kinds of instruments and musicians, and but it is just that one-way traffic.
Mm-hmm.
I am not that interested in that. Again, I don't reject it, you know.
Yeah.
People should do, we live in a free world, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and if that is their inspiration, fine, great.
Mm-hmm.
But I think much more interesting things have happened with that. There's a famous ensemble there in the States, what is it? Kronos or so.
Kronos, but they're here also, or the...
Or is it Kronos? Is that American?
Kronos is here.
It's here, well, it's
Here.
another one. I am totally open to any type of experiment.
Yeah, maybe it starts somewhere. No, maybe it starts like that, and it develops because yes, you can use a sarangi, a sitar, like in a contemporary Western classical context, no, but more just as a mere exotic sound, or as a different timbre, or but in completely disconceptualized from its own context. Not just like okay, I wanted to, but then maybe you lose also the richness of the possibilities of the.
Again, you know, if you have a cellist or a saxophone player or a violinist for that matter, which can do everything in Indian music, and the people have enough training and they put it into a kind of Western context, it could be very good. It could be excellent, actually. But you need that double kind of talent, right? You need to have that Western understanding of music. That how to compose and stuff like that, and to do that on a real professional level, and you have to need that Indian type of training and understanding. That's rare.
It's difficult. With both traditions are very demanding, also.
Yeah, but it's interesting things. That Dutch girl who plays with Harley, the harp.
Ah, yes.
With what is his name? The saxophone.
With Brooks, Rob Brooks. Wait, it's
very nice guy.
Yeah.
What's his name? No, okay. And that girl who played harp, I thought it was a beautiful piece.
Yeah.
So it depends how you listen to it, how you go to it. I thought George Brooks.
George Brooks, yeah.
And the harpist
Gwyneth
something, yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. That's
maybe in small ensembles it's even more.
No, small ensembles are much better.
It's more
than all these.
better.
Why do you need all these goddamn 80 violins and 60 trumpets and I mean, come on. That itself is a ridiculous thing. That is a. You see, I always tell these classical musicians, whether they want to listen or not, I said your music has become fossilized. Fossilized is a fossil, you know. Fossil, it has become stuck. Most Western classical musicians don't know how to improvise a single note because they are not trained. And they are taught by idiots, you know, who, this is the only interpretation for this concerto. So, the orchestra itself is fossilized. The orchestra, in my opinion, you know, became, certainly in that goddamn Germany, became a symbol of nationalism. The more and this, you know, the more noise you could make, the more it sounded like we are, like the bloody Americans now. We are the boss. We are the boss. We tell you how to do. Now we know that the Germans did that for a long time. I don't like symphonic music that much anymore. Sometimes I hear it's beautiful, but it expresses this totally ridiculous amount of sound and noise you hear, you know. That is not beautiful to me. The beauty is in the subtlety. A single boy or girl playing with their guitar or with a piano and a really beautiful melody and poetry, and it is the subtlety of the music which will always remain there. We don't need all these ridiculous big orchestras. That is an invention of the early 19th century. And there's hardly any classical musician who has thought about it. No, they all want to compose for these goddamn stupid big orchestras, and you put some non-Western instruments there too, so to get some exotic sounds. Come on, that's not beautiful. So I don't think it should come there. No, it comes in small ensembles. The real stuff will happen in the smaller, in the more subtle ensembles.
And you have also more intimate communication also.
Yeah.
That's true.
Again, I don't. If people want to do these big orchestras, who am I to stop them? I won't. But it is.
Well, I guess it's all part of the experimentation also, no, of a process also.
Yeah, but
trying
it's
out
more
things.
than that. It is also people like Ravi Shankar, and including Hariji, they want to do this orchestra because the orchestra is the symbol of the power.
That's true.
So it is also an idée fixe, a fixed idea, you know, okay, now we play with an orchestra, so now we are taken seriously. In the whole world, except in India and a few other countries, they destroyed their own music with this fucking orchestras and all this fucking Western music. Right?
That's true. The folk
And only because it was the symbol of superiority. Classical music, Western music, is the last bulwark of colonialism. People hate it when I say this, but it's true. And in all these countries, also in where you come from, it was this Western hegemony. So the orchestra also expressed power, superiority. And all these people thought they were superior. And probably 95% of classical musicians in the West still think they are superior to any other music. Because they are brainwashed and they are stupid. And they never read something and they never think. So I am not so much, again, people can do what they want to do, but I don't see that it will happening it is not going to happen in orchestral music. No, small ensembles. That's what I think.
Yeah, nice.
And it proves also because it is all the fusion things which are working are always small things.
Yeah, no, and it will be very interesting also. It's not more diminishing because less musicians, or it can be equally interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joep. Such a luxury to talk to you for this time. You want to add anything? Say anything?
No. Well, you should read some of these two books. Maybe you should
Yes,
read for your. And then, if you have more questions, we meet again. If there's things coming out of your own research,
Yes, I will.
then we can talk again.
That's great. Okay. Maybe I want to show you how we stop. Say bye.
Bye.